Halloween. Thank you for all joining us here today to go over Dr. Zielinski's overview of what she just presented at Team Luke, the conference, and how harnessing the retina to rewire the brain functions. So I wanted to introduce our presenter, Dr. Zielinski. Go ahead and take it away, Dr. Z.
Okay. Are you able to see me?
We can. Yep. Got you and the slides up.
You see me and the slides. My computer doesn't, it just shows the slides. So happy Halloween. This machine or instrument is called a phoropter. And what we're used to is the eye exam blocking off one eye and having a little hole to look through. And what we'll do now is talk about why for our brain injured patients or this people from Team Luke, they need a little bit more than just looking through a hole straight ahead. I wanted to thank Rhonda Johnson, who set this up from Team Luke, and then thank David Smythe and Adam Zielinski and Jordan Bond. Jordan is leading all the questions. Team Luke had this something called Making Connections, and it's a pediatric group that works with a lot of non-speaking children who've had some sort of brain injury. They've been around for a while, and Rhonda Johnson almost single-handedly put on this incredible show with many different speakers and many different people who were showing, many different vendors who were showing communication boards and help for the caregivers and different things. So we were talking there about brain switches and how you can use the retina to change your brain activity. The retina is the lining of the eye, and it's an extension of brain tissue. So if you think of the brain and you take a fistful of brain tissue and you pull it forward, that becomes the retina. And it's not like a piece of skin. It's got many different sections to it, like a patchwork quilt. So what we can do is shine light selectively onto the different sections and find out what's happening in the brain. Because the retina has a one-to-one, point-to-point correspondence with the brain. So if we shine a light on one spot on the retina, there's a corresponding spot on the brain that matches it. You shine a light a different way, and there's a different corresponding spot. So as optometrists, we're actually doing brain mapping through the retina. We can control light from the outside by glasses, and we can control switches on the inside by thoughts. So if you're really deep in conversation with somebody, your brain switches off your peripheral eyesight. And if you're thinking about something and are scared, your brain switches on the peripheral eyesight to hunt around and see what's going on. So the peripheral eyesight is where all of the fun stuff happens. It turns on and off depending on what's going on in your brain. And the central eyesight is what's tested in a standard eye examination. So there's two types of brain switches. The one for scanning the outside surroundings and something in your brain for visualization. So if I said to you, look around your room and find something red, you can look around and scan, but your brain is going to do something different with your eyes than if I said, look around and find something that has vertical lines drawn on it. Or if you're in a big crowd of people and I said, look around and tell me how many blonde-haired people there are. Or I said, look around and tell me how many people have mustaches. What your brain does to plan the scanning changes depending on what you're wanting to scan for. Meanwhile, inside your head, if I said to picture a dog, some people would picture a golden retriever and some people would picture a chihuahua. Other people would picture a dog running along the beach. Other people would picture just a dog sitting on a staircase. So everybody has an internal visualization and they have the ability to scan their outside surroundings. And each of those contributes to visual processing. So when you're doing the eye examination, it's got to include brain activity, because the letters on a chart that are not moving is one type of test. But there's so many other things that happen, and people who have brain injuries need those other things tested. The general population is fine just using the letters on a chart, but the brain injured population needs more. Now, eye muscles are no different than other muscles. So, for instance, when I was trying to ride on a bicycle and do some exercises, I understood what the trainer was telling me to do. I heard it through my ears. I comprehended everything. But then there was a whole fight internally of, well, he wants me to stand on one foot and move my arms and lift a weight. And the part of my brain says, I don't want to do that. It's 6:30 in the morning. And the other part of the brain says, but no, you have to do this. It's good for you. It's healthy. So there's a lot of thinking that goes on before you get a muscle movement. And it's the same thing with eye muscles. There's different parts of your brain. There's a reflex brain, there's an emotional brain, and there's a thinking brain. Part of the reflex brain controls digestion. So there's many different nervous systems that work, but the emotional brain comes before the thinking brain. It filters what's going on in the thinking brain. So if I'm thirsty and I want to get a drink of water, there's a part of my brain that says, well, the water fountain is way over there, and you'd have to get up and walk and get the cup and come back. Is it worth it? So all of those decisions on, is something worth it? Do you have enough energy? Do you want it that badly? How much is it going to hurt if you're injured and you have to get up and walk? Those are things that go on in the emotional brain before you make a decision for action. So we as optometrists are watching the action of the eye muscles, and we're controlling the input. So if we know which parts of the retina that we're shining light onto, and we know what we put in people's ears to tell them to do something, and then we measure their decision of how they choose to scan, how they choose to move their eyes, or how they choose to avoid something, then we can figure out how they're processing. So you have conscious peripheral awareness that's shown in blue here. You have conscious central attention that's shown with the white line. But that's just one part of what you're seeing. There's also subconscious awareness in the green, looking for threats. And the subconscious part that's looking for threats in your periphery, when you have a brain injury, a lot of times the conscious takes over and you're hyper aware of it. You're very aware of everything around you and you can't tune it out. So most of our patients have problems with this peripheral way on the sides, the green part here, or they have problems with sounds and where the sounds are visualized. 94% of the surroundings is not where your conscious attention is. And that periphery is connected to emotions from that emotional brain, energy from the reflex brain, and behavior from the thinking brain. So you have the different parts of the brain all connected to the peripheral eyesight. And then the neat thing is that in the peripheral retina, not all of the signals are actually linked with eyesight. Some of them are linked with posture. Some of them are linked with mood regulation. Some are linked with glucose regulation. So the sugar levels in the blood, many different things. So there's a lot of things connected to retinal stimulation that are not eyesight related. This is Patrick Quaid's research that determined the 94%. So when should you be on autopilot? When should the subconscious systems be working? When you're trying to stay safe, as I said earlier, or when you're moving and thinking at the same time. So if you're reading, you want to have scanning ability be subconscious so that you can concentrate on what you're reading and think about it. Or if you're catching a ball, the ball location should be subconscious so that you can be planning the next play. Or it should be automatic after you've habituated to something, after you've rehearsed it a lot of times. So if you've ever watched a AAA employee changing a tire, they can come and talk to you and change a tire in 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Boom, boom. They just know what their hands have to do, and they can completely hold a conversation while doing that. If you've changed a tire once a decade, like I do, then it takes 45 minutes and you have to have full attention on each step because you can't also be talking. So habits should be subconscious, and scanning should be subconscious, and safety should be subconscious. But when people have brain injuries, a lot of times all of those get onto the conscious level. And when you start using conscious effort instead of subconscious effort, you drain your energy and you get what's called neurofatigue. Another example would be playing a piano piece or singing a well-rehearsed song. Your body just knows it because it's done it so many times. So to put a scientific aspect to this, there are 2 books coming out. This is Nanosurgery and Nanoneuroscience. It's a 2nd edition coming out December 5th. And I have a chapter in there about retinal processing. And then Neurophotonics and Brain Mapping was in 2017. I have a chapter there. And we have an upcoming 2nd edition, which will probably be out by the end of 2025 or 2026. So a lot of the material I'm covering is covered at a much higher level in those books. So here's some of the systems that are connected to the retina that I was talking about that don't have anything to do with eyesight. They deal with yourself first, and these are faster. Your brain wants to know how you are. Can you breathe? Are you feeling good? Do you have energy? Are you safe? Do I care? So many patients, when you put a target up and you say, follow this target, if they don't care about it, they're not going to bother. So then how is your environment? Is it too hot, too cold, too bright, too dim, too noisy? And then where's my body located? My torso with respect to gravity. And then where's my head with respect to my body? And where's my eye with respect to the head? And then you get where's the object with respect to the eye. So you have this, yourself first, then the object. And the identification of the object is a slow pathway. That's the regular eyesight pathway. And then you have all the mental imagery inside your brain of what you're anticipating. And then there's something called blind sight, which is a backup. So lots and lots and lots of different signaling pathways are activated with just a little bit of light. Some of them are for how am I, and some are for where am I, and those both come before the eyesight pathways. So here's the eyeball, and all these blue lines are the different kinds of eyesight, like peripheral eyesight, central eyesight, light sensitivity, contrast. But all these other ones, many, many, many other ones, are linked with, like I said earlier, different moods, mood regulation and emotions, and the glucose regulation and sleep, like jet lag. All of those come in here, the how am I. And at the bottom, this orange one, those are linked with posture centers, which I'll show you later in this here, what's regulated. So another way to look at this is yourself versus the object. The non-eyesight signals are faster, and the eyesight signals are slower. You have your reflexes, your emotional system. This is the am I safe, who am I, do I care? And then you have the thinking, the subconscious low energy and the conscious high energy. And then you have your 20/20 testing way at the end. So all the other stuff has to happen. Another way to look at it is that before you aim and focus on a target, you have to have reflex brain, emotional brain, and then your thinking brain. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And people who have a brain injury, again, like I said earlier, are using conscious level attention instead of some subconscious. And that's just draining their energy. One of my patients said she calls it brain drain, and it leads to brain pain. And it's not fun. So I just wanted to go into a segment on different ways that glasses can affect you. Here's a way that glasses can affect your posture, and it depends on your personality, the hip position. So if you start shifting things, when we put glasses on to magnify or minify and targets start shifting, then the shoulder rotates the same way as the eyes. And the view is changed a little bit. But the hips depend on the personality. So some people, if their head rotates and their shoulder rotates, their hips also rotate all the same way. And other people, if their head and shoulders rotate, the hips go the opposite way to counterbalance. So glasses can shift the shoulders inwards and outwards. Glasses can rotate the shoulders along the hip axis. Glasses can shift the hips forward and backwards. Glasses can crop out the top and bottom of what's seen, or crop out the sides, or crop out angles. Oops. Crop out angles. Where's the back? Oops. Trying to go backwards. Hold on. Don't know how to do that. Wait a minute. I'm trying to go back. There we go. Or crop out on angles. There we go. So a lot of neuroscientists and a lot of optometrists set the stage for what the Mind Eye Institute's doing patented, the patented usage of the eye and ear connection. My mentor was Dr. Albert Sutton. His mentor was Dr. A.M. Skeffington. Each of them had a question they asked. Skeffington asked, why could people reject glasses when the glasses made them see clearly? He couldn't figure out why his patients were throwing glasses in his face and saying, I hate these. And he would check them and they'd see great, but they didn't like them. They weren't comfortable. And he discovered how there was two separate sets of processes, one to see clearly and identify, and a different one to navigate. And then my mentor, Albert Sutton, his question was, why can you do the same thing on two different people and one person's brain rewires and one person doesn't? We're harnessing the retina to rewire the brain, but why doesn't it work on everybody? And he figured out there were biochemical reasons between the two, different vitamin deficiencies. And my research is, how come some people cannot link their auditory perception with their visual perception until I put different glasses on? And so that's my lifelong work. The news called Mind Eyes glasses life-changing because they're prescribed for that 94%. They're not necessarily prescribed for the 6%. So here's an example of what glasses did for a person with encephalitis, which is brain inflammation. It should play where you can hear it. Let me see. Oops. No, it shouldn't. This is supposed to be an embedded video, but it's not. So what the video shows is a lady who's not able to speak easily until she puts glasses on, and then her mouth will move. But without the glasses, if she's concentrating, she's not able to speak. So it's a very powerful video, but I don't see the link here, probably because this is on a Google slide and it's embedded into a PowerPoint. Here's that same lady who got written up in a journal. She was unable to find where a bell is until she put glasses on. When she had glasses on, she could find the bell. When she had glasses off, she could not find the bell. So this has just been written up, the International Journal of Physiotherapy and Research. And it's an integrated approach using physical therapy and lenses to treat post-encephalitis syndrome and lupus. Oops. So she had the different pairs of glasses and they did different things. So I want to leave a lot of time for questions. So the take-home points that from this that I spoke to Team Luke about were that you should know retinal changes influence brain activity, realize that there's non-eyesight pathways, and when you put glasses on, it affects those pathways like emotions and mood regulations and thinking and energy and posture. And then understand that since people's brains differ, the successive treatment modalities also differ. And a lot of times you need multiple modalities in a cohesive, coordinated effort in order to make a difference. So I hope that you leave understanding and conceptualizing that the retinal processing is actually brain processing, noting that the non-image forming or the non-eyesight pathways or the optic nerve signals are routed to lots and lots of places other than eyesight. There's many brains to coordinate. So the reflex brain, the emotional brain, the thinking brain, the digestive brain, they all have to coordinate. And you can turn switches on and off that can be tested and changed from learning new skills. So I can't answer everything, but we're going to answer a bunch now that Jordan has. If you have questions, you can put a question in an email to info@mindeye.com and attention Team Luke question. Oops. Thank you. Let's see how to.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Zelinsky. Appreciate that. That was great. I go into the question and answer part of the presentation now, and like Dr. Zelinsky said, we might not be able to get to everything, but if for any reason we're not able to get to your question, I've seen some that have popped up here into the chat as well, so we'll try to add those in as we can. If for any reason she's not able to get to that question, like she said, just send an email over to info@mindeye.com and we can get you in touch and get some of those answers answered for you. All right, well, so let's go ahead and start off here. First question is going to be from Constance. She said, if one had a car accident and gets ocular migraines and brain fog, sensitivity to light and sound, what types of activities would help? Cataract surgery is also an imminent thing for her as well.
So if cataract surgery is imminent, that means she's probably older rather than younger. Typically, if you have a car accident, it's a trauma that you're not expecting, and your brain can get jostled and things can get unplugged. So when you start with ocular migraines and brain fog, really often that's when the right signals and the left signals are not balanced with each other. So when you say what activities would be helpful, it's not, first I would have you measured to see what's out of whack, what's not balanced. And then the types of activities would be designed around how you perceive yourself versus gravity. So again, you have your lower torso that has to be stable against gravity, then your upper body against your lower body. Your head has to be stable with a good relationship with your upper body. And then your eyes have to have a good relationship in your head. So I'd want to know things like if you moved your eyes around, does it hurt? Does that make you dizzy? Does that trigger an ocular migraine? You have light sensitivity that says that the peripheral retina is on hyper alert. And so something has to be done to tone it down. When we have patients with light sensitivity, a lot of times their eyes and ears don't link, or their right and left doesn't link, or the central and peripheral doesn't link. And all of those imbalances have to be gone first. After you get those imbalances under control and the postural changes under control, then the activities would be between you and an object. And then you'd have you moving with objects moving, you moving with objects stationary, you stationary with objects moving, and then you and stationary objects. So there's no activity that I can just give you saying, oh, you had a car accident and you have a diagnosis of ocular migraines and light sensitivity, therefore you need these activities. You have to, it's everything's so unique. It has to be designed around your brain. And we'd work with the reflex brain, the emotional brain, the thinking brain. We work with psychological people, psychoanalysts, social workers to deal with the emotional brain that's governing the thinking brain. And then we work with Donnelly Marcus on the thinking brain. She does cognitive work. We're working with perception, which is how to make the outside environment come in a balanced manner.
Good. Thank you. Next question is going to be from Louise. And her question is, are we able to help with people that have had brain damage from mold and who are now experiencing EMF hypersensitivity,
Mhm.
specifically reactions in her gut health for that?
Interesting. That's more of Jill Carnahan's wheelhouse. So when you say, are we able to help? We can put glasses on that alter some of the biochemistry in the body, but to deal with the toxins, that's you could check out Jill Carnahan, Carna Carnahan, HAN. Her specialty is exactly what you just wrote: toxins and EMFs. We have had people, which is interesting. We have a stegitizer in the plugs, the outlets, and I've had autistic people who are stimming, and they're stimming, and you put those in the outlets behind them, and it lowers the EMFs, and I've seen their stimming stop. We've had children who are autistic who go kind of crazy, and then you put those in a room, and then they're more calm. So the question is, do we work with that? We're aware of it, but typically we would refer out to somebody who specifically specializes in toxins. We try to stay in our own lane, which is perceptual imbalances.
Thank you. The next question is going to be kind of a twofold question from Terry. She has a friend with an eye injury that she received as a child who's now in her 60s, had lifelong depth perception issues, poor vision. She's very afraid of anything happening to her other eye since that would be catastrophic. Is it possible to help restore her injured eye vision, or has it been too long?
It hasn't been too long because brains change no matter what. I directed a clinic for legally blind people for many years in Florida, and we had people who were in their 80s and 90s who would lose the eyesight in their good eye, and same as her friend, that one eye would be bad since childhood and the other eye then went from macular degeneration. And then all of a sudden they'd say, wow, the eye that I never used for 80 years started working again. So it's not too long. As far as the fact that she was a child when she got injured, if she had depth perception ever, even as a baby and a 1-year-old as a toddler, and then had an injury, then I believe that it can come back again. Sue Barry's book called Fixing My Gaze. She was 47 years old when she got depth perception for the first time. And that's a fascinating book. So, I mean, you're not too old because your brain keeps learning. But can you get back, the crystal clear eyesight or what you're looking for? Not necessarily, but you can certainly learn how to use visual skills that you don't have otherwise. So you can develop new visual skills, learn to use the faster pathways of the periphery, and not rely so much on the central, slower skills.
Okay. Okay. And then the other part of her question, I think it's an interesting one as well. Her niece is a teen and has anorexia. Anything that we can do on a standpoint for that?
That's a fascinating question. Because years and years ago, Abby Natenshone, who's a specialist in anorexia, was talking to me, and she said how interesting it is that eyesight and movement and perception and light are linked together with hunger. So So in other words, when you sleep for 8 or 9 or 10 hours, you don't get hungry because you're not moving and it's dark. But if you're up and it's light and you're moving around, then you do get hungry every couple of hours. So hunger has a lot of brain pathways linked with the retina, and it's activated by lighting conditions. As far as anorexia specifically, there were studies somewhere way back in the 90s where if you covered one eye and you had an anorexia person look in a mirror, they would see themselves as fat one way and like medium another way. But the two images that they perceived were different sizes. And so uh, many years ago in the 90s, I worked with some anorexic patients, and we just made the sizes equal, and then they changed their habits.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So again, we're just working with visual perception, but it has offshoots in many, many areas.
Next question is going to be from Alex. Their question is that it's surrounding glaucoma. So their right eye is faltering due to glaucoma. Can our glasses and our methodology help overcome that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to assume it's primary open angle glaucoma, but because that's the more common one. What glaucoma is a clogged up drain in your eye. And there's about 1.2 million nerve fibers that leave the eye and go to the different parts of the brain. Glaucoma kills some of those fibers. So we can't fix or do anything with the fibers that are already damaged, but you can take the leftover ones and make them learn how to be used to a full extreme. So it's like taking somebody who has 10 fingers and they lose 3 fingers and 1 finger. So they lose 4 fingers and teaching them how to type. You could learn how to type, but it's a different way from what you used to know. So with glaucoma, you have to learn how to use what's left over in your eye, and you can't go back to try to learn the old habit. So the answer to him is, yeah, we can do quite a bit, but that's a progressive course of learning skills. There's not a magic pair of glasses that poof makes you see again.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Next question is going to be from Jennifer, and this has to do with kind of timing as well on kind of injuries. How does the time of injury correlate to the treatment effectiveness?
I don't find, well, it doesn't. But what has to happen is if you're close to the time of injury, your brain hasn't had time to make a new habit. So it's easier. But if you're long standing 20, 30 years later, you have to break the old habit and then make a new habit. So depending on how motivated you are, you can still do that. You can always learn a new skill. It's just easier when you're newer. It's like teaching someone another language. A 3 or 4-year-old can learn a language easily, and a 50-year-old can also learn a language. It just takes a lot more work.
Yeah. Okay.
So the brain doesn't stop developing. But it's a whether you have to break the old habits or not.
Okay. Next question is from James, and we've had this on some other webinars and things too, and it's always a good one to go back over on. He's wondering if you have had many patients that have come to you that have previously tried Irlen lenses.
Yeah, many, yes. And actually, in the 90s, I worked with the government on an Irlen lens project for the Navy, but for reading ability. The Irlen lenses are different colors. It's really Mears. They now call it Mears-Irlen syndrome because a lady named Mears discovered it, and then Irlen marketed it. But the Irlen lenses are different colors, different frequencies of light. They allow certain wavelengths in, and they help people with reading. So they've been used for people with reading problems, dyslexia, many different things. Typically, in the 90s, when I used to go and visit the Irlen centers, they would say, we have many different colors, and we try the colors in front of a person. We'll put two colors, down and say which is better, one or two, three or four. And they would tell the people, bring glasses in, and then we can put the color in the glasses. And they wouldn't care what kind of prescription, as long as you had a glasses prescription, they would just put the color in. Then you would wear the glasses and then come back to them, so many months later, and they would see if the color needed changing. So have I worked with people with that? Yes, I have. I believe that the color is one aspect of the prescription, and the lens itself is a different aspect. And you can't just get any old lens that makes you see clearly, because you need a lens that enhances the periphery. The colors enhance periphery. And so I guess the answer to that is, yeah, we've worked with people. We're familiar with it. There's also something called chromogen, which we have here, which are different colored lenses that also help reading problems. But typically, if the lens is designed for the periphery, you often don't need a tint.
Thank you. And then next question is going to be from Linda. She had a concussion 4 years ago. She's still suffering with a lot of vestibular issues, any slight motion, but there's no longer anything related to crystals in her ears. She has a lot of overstimulation, people talking from multiple areas, multiple things going on, extremely problematic. She said, she'd love any insight on kind of how that can help. And she said that various and traditional physical therapy, eye exercises, noise exposure, things like that have not been helpful so far.
Well, visual therapy and noise exposure are external things. I would want to know what she's done internally, and whether she's worked with anybody that connects the external with the internal. So in other words, like eye exercise to aim and focus, as I showed on the slide, you have to do a lot of thinking beforehand. So if you perceive in your mind, how far away is something, and then you aim at it, you're putting a lot of other infrastructure in place first. If she's had the problems with her ears and had vertigo, it's likely that the connection between the head position and the neck, like her neck and her head and her upper body, are a little bit different from each other, mismatched. And if so, that's going to mess up her eyesight, like where the navigation part of her eyesight. So in other words, can we help her, or what could she do? Because she's already tried the classic visual therapy. She's tried physical therapy. It sounds like she needs something that coordinates internal and external systems. And that would be what we do, called a visual rehabilitative program, where we individualize something and figure out what you do in your everyday life, and then where are your strengths, where are your interests, and we take the strong strengths and interests and slowly work and rehearse so that you build up the skills that aren't good.
And so would we be her next stop, or is there someone that needs to help her connect some of that external and internal first?
No, we would be, she would be the type of patient that would be perfect for here, because we could analyze things that haven't been looked at yet. Like just even judgment, even balancing. Like if you do physical therapy and they make you balance on one foot or another, or watch your midline shift, you can put different glasses on that shift your posture so that your visual perception is shifted. And it sounds like nobody's looked at location of sound and how it linked with location of sights. Noise stimulation and noise exposure is just sounds coming in, but was it linked with visual exposure together? It doesn't sound like that was done. And was that coordinated with body and physical movement? So it sounds like we would do an initial evaluation and then figure out what aspect is needed. And then there's online programs that work with some of this stuff. There's practitioners that work with some of it. And then there's glasses that change the outside environment.
Okay.
Typically, people like that, if they have glasses that make them see 20/20, the eye doctors tell them they don't need to change their glasses. But very often, one eye is 20/20 real clearly and easily with no effort, and the other eye is 20/20 with effort. So they're not balanced with each other.
Well, then the next question here is going to be from Dan, and pretty brief question. Have we helped with severe photophobia?
Okay. Some people, yes, and some people, no. I mean, photophobia comes from a lot of different causes, and some people have been helped significantly. We have a testimonial from a guy named Murphy, and he had such severe photophobia that he could never go watch his daughter play baseball or soccer or anything. And he got a pair of glasses from here and was amazed because he could go outside without sunglasses and walk around. So his would be for the person with that question, go look up Murphy's testimonial for photophobia. That's an old one, I think, probably from 2019 or 2020. Probably 2019, before COVID.
And then this next one has a lot to do about dissociation and things. Chloe had a concussion and whiplash injury back in May. When she looks at her environment, she oftentimes is unable to connect memories with familiar places, objects. Sometimes if she moves her eyes in certain directions and holds it, things feel a bit more familiar. She also feels like she's not fully in an environment. When she looks at herself, she can't feel like she really sees herself, and also sometimes feels disconnected from her body. These issues kind of fluctuate throughout the day. And she's started getting some treatments on her neck, which seems to help with some of the issues. But she's wondering if, that's something that we would be able to help.
That's more if somebody called with that, I would start them with Alice Nixon, because she's saying that she feels like she's an observer rather than a participant in her environment. And she's saying that when she moves her eyes different positions, sometimes it's a little better. Alice does some techniques that allow for emotions and thoughts to link together, and also to have the person be not so dissociated. But that could be done concurrently with what we do at Mind Eye, because again, Mind Eye can put glasses on to change the way the input is coming in. And then she could work with Alice on the dissociation feeling. We have patients with Alice in Wonderland syndrome. We have patients with dissociation pretty frequently, actually. And we had one that was talking to me about if he looks at his hands, he sees his hands get bigger and smaller. If he looks at the ground, he sees the ground like sloping and moving. And there are many, many, many people that say they feel like they observe, they don't participate. So she could either put a pair of glasses on and see if that helped enough and then try Alice, or she could try Alice and then come here, or do both at the same time. Is she local or is she from another state?
I don't know, Chloe, if you're on the chat still, if you can pop a message in, let us know if you're local and we can.
Yeah. Because if you're local, you could do it, simultaneously. But if you're from somewhere else, it would have to be coordinated.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye out. I'll go to the next question here, and then if she responds back, we'll go back to that. See if we can get her in touch with Alice as well. This question is from Susan, and it's kind of I know the answer to the one, but the ear ringing I think is good. She said, can anything be done to help improve eyesight and ear ringing?
Wait, so can anything be done to help improve eyesight and ear ringing?
Yeah.
Well, typically, Ear ringing comes from a jaw muscle that gets to be too tight. So when we put glasses on that loosen the jaw muscle, a lot of people find ear ringing alleviated. Um, but as far as eyesight goes, it I don't know what you mean. If she means clarity of eyesight, um, I would assume that any eye doctor could put glasses on to sharpen clarity. So since she's asking us, it might I'm trying to assume that she's not meaning clarity, that she means something else. Um, so I can't answer too much of that because I don't have enough information. I mean, does she have a lazy eye where her eyesight's not good and never has been since childhood? Or does she have two separate eyes that are each good, but she doesn't coordinate them together? Or, you know, or if she gets glasses that makes her see clearly, is she uncomfortable? So it's too broad of a question to answer.
Gotcha. Okay, and Chloe did respond. She's actually in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. So in Los Angeles, she could do a Zoom call with Alice first for the dissociation, and then she could go in Valencia to do a joint appointment where we were online and we watched what was happening with Chloe and prescribed something with another office there. So she could write us info@mindeye.com and ask what it would entail to set up a joint appointment.
Okay. I'm going to go back to Dan's. He thanked you for answering his question about photophobia. Is asking, could you say more about some of the cases of photophobia that can be helped and others that cannot?
That's a good question. Some of them can be helped, but the people don't want to bother with the effort that it takes to get them better. So, for instance, some of the photophobia is caused by sensitive sensors on the retina. So we can use blocking devices like Scotch tape on the glasses, and you can specifically block different areas, like I showed with the patient with lupus and encephalitis. Many people don't want to wear glasses that have little funny spots on them. So even though they could have their photophobia helped, they prefer to look prettier rather than looking funny. Some people don't want to go through the learning phase, which might be weeks of hard work to rehearse in your mind and change your habits of how you're looking at things. So the people who can't be helped, sometimes it's a compliance issue.
Okay.
And sometimes it's a several step process issue.
Yeah, definitely more of a rehabilitative process than quick fix.
And then and then sometimes we'll help people. And like I've had one lady from Seattle, and she came in, she had like photophobia. We put glasses on her and she was way better. So what did she do the first day she got the glasses? She went to Target and Walmart and then to a concert and all these things, and then she was bedridden again because it was so horrible. So the photophobia is usually your brain's way of saying I'm in fight or flight mode. And if you get calm, your brain doesn't always feel that that's the way you should be. And it says, no, we're supposed to be more in fight or flight mode. So you have to do things bit by bit by bit by bit. And a lot of people don't want to stick that out.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I think we've got time for one more here. This one's a little off topic on some of the things that we're talking about with TBIs, but it's in regards to patients with severe autism. Wondering how much a person could benefit from them. Will they wear the glasses? They also had some questions about the effect that it would have on some of the ADHD behaviors as well.
Okay. And is that in the same child, or is it an autistic child with ADHD, or is it two different children?
I believe so. Yeah, same person with the questions.
Yeah. The research has shown that it's a continuum. We call it from pen light to floodlight mode. So if you think of a stage where there's a floodlight on the whole stage, then you don't know what to put your attention on. But if they dim the whole stage and they put one spotlight on one person's face, then that's what you watch, and you don't watch the rest. So your brain does the same thing. It can shrink things to a pen light mode where you're just looking at one target, or it can expand and turn on the peripheral retina so that you see everything. And in autism, the research studies have shown that the peripheral retina does not have as much stimulation. It's tuned out most of the time. The chemical activity is just not happening there. And in ADHD, they found that the peripheral retina has more stimulation, too much, and it can't be turned off. So again, like we started at the very beginning, we can selectively choose to angle light to different spots on the retina. So if you have autism and ADHD, the likelihood is that some spots on your peripheral retina are hypersensitive and other spots are hyposensitive. And yeah, you can design glasses to wake up the spots that are not awakened yet and tone down the spots that are too much on. As far as a severe autism person, will they wear the glasses? Yeah, if they make it comfortable. And we've had many severe autistic children who choose to wear their glasses, and their parents are surprised, like they'll wake up and go finding their glasses. And it's because if you put regular glasses on designed for just their eyesight, but it messes up their hearing, then they don't like them. And a lot of children will throw the glasses off. But if you put glasses on that make the sight and the sounds meld together, and it's comfortable for them. And when your brain is comfortable, you tend to turn on your periphery to look around and scan. So it's still all about the internal and external systems, that when you're comfortable on the inside, you will awaken the signals to explore the outside. When you're not comfortable on the inside, if you're going to throw up, if you're sick, if you have fever, then you shrink your awareness and don't pay as much attention and get crankier. And then your balance is worse, because if you turn off your periphery, your sense of balance is not as good. It's as if you're walking on a small plank. If you turn on your periphery and it's a wide floor, then it's easier to stay balanced. So for the severe autistic person, yeah, the glasses are very different, and ours are designed with a patented usage of linking the auditory spatial perception with the visual spatial perception.
Oh, awesome. Well, I think that we're wrapping up here around an hour here. We're a little over time, so don't want to know you've got to get to sleep and have some rest and stuff. You've been busy with patients all day, so we really appreciate you doing these webinars every single time. I know that it's extremely beneficial for patients and people around the world that are tuning in on these, and we appreciate everyone that was able to join us tonight on a Halloween evening.
Yeah.
We will have this recording that will be posted here within the next couple of days. We'll send out links to everybody. And again, if you have, I know that there's a lot of other additional questions that are in that chat. Please send an email out to info@MindEye. We're going to try to record some of these as well, and we can send out if people want to post their email addresses as well. We can try to get some questions answered as well that way.
So we can have an addendum video with the answers to the other questions.
Yeah, if we could do an addendum video, or even send out some individualized.
Back to Halloween.
There you go. There you go. Well, again, yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and happy Halloween to you. That's a very inventive costume. I like it.